Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting, the September 9th Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee to order. This is a hybrid meeting, so as a reminder to participants, please speak very clearly and into your microphones, okay? And I'll try to do the same. Live stream of this public meeting is available to the public on youtube.com at the ABOR Live link, and that information is also available on the website of the Arizona Board of Regents. Today we'll begin our meeting with an update from the Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction, Kathy Hoffman, and next, after that, the committee will focus on improving Arizona educational attainment by discussing the admission process and the policy associated with it. And I'm going to come back to you, Superintendent Hoffman, in a moment after I do this overview. And the committee will then be asked to review ASU's request to offer a 2-year academic program in conjunction with the United States Navy. That will be followed by NAU's request for recommendation of board approval for their new general education program framework. The committee will receive an update on the Arizona Innovation Alliance. And this alliance, as all of us will recall, is the unique, and I'm using the word unique quite intentionally here, not by accident to suggest that it's just special, the unique intrastate alliance that calls on our 3 universities for collaboration for the greater good of Arizona. The committee today will also be asked to review and recommend for board approval online metrics for Arizona's public universities and the proposed institutional university metrics for the University of Arizona. And in addition, the committee will engage in a discussion with Arizona State University regarding its proposed institutional university metrics. And if you wonder why we've been allocated nearly 3 hours today, that's the reason as I go through all of that overview. And before we begin, though, and before I get to Superintendent Hoffman, a few more things I'd like to say. First, I believe NAU's interim provost, Karen Pugliese, and I probably have again pronounced it wrong, Karen, and I apologize. Go ahead, Karen. Welcome. And now, pronounce your name for all of us so that we don't call you Karen P, as I was told everyone did at NAU.
Thank you. It's Pugliese.
Pugliese. And we welcome you, Provost Pugliese. We're very happy to have you at the table and very happy to have you join us for this particular committee's meetings. There will be more of them while you're interim, I anticipate. Second, I'd like to provide just a look ahead for the year for our work, in addition to the overview I've already provided for this meeting. Number one, this committee will continue to focus on our attention to Arizona's educational attainment and meeting the educational needs of a 21st century new economy workforce in terms of both growth of graduates in critical areas of our workforce and increasing access of Arizonans to higher education. We begin this focus today on attainment by considering admission to our 3 universities. And as a reminder, the data that ABOR, ASU, and Helios have made available through the decision theater clarify that rigor in K through 12 preparation is a very huge challenge in this state to our attainment goal. It behooves this board to examine how we can influence influence our schools in the state of Arizona to do more to improve their rigor and to incent schools to focus not just on graduating high school students, but to incent them to send students on to post-secondary educational and training experiences. Number 2 for the year, we'll review and seek to further improve financial aid that makes higher education accessible to working class families and gives prospective students a choice in university. Number 3, as we move through the year, we expect to continue to serve Arizona better by elaborating the differentiated nature of our universities in the state of Arizona. I happen to have spent a lot of time in North Carolina, both as a kid and a college student, because that's where a lot of my relatives were. But if you look at a state like North Carolina, you have a variety of differentiated options available to the residents of the state of North Carolina. You have the nationally recognized school and University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. You have a land-grant university in NC State. You have an historically Black institution in a school like Winston-Salem State University, and you have UNC Asheville, the state's public liberal arts university. Arizonans deserve nothing less than universities that highly are differentiated by audience, mission, key performance indicators like the metrics we've been working on, and the kind of differentiation we've been talking about. Finally, over the course of the year, number 4, we'll continue to work with faculty and university leaders in realizing the implementation of a general education requirement that supports and preserves our democratic institutions. These are times when increased attention to those institutions and the necessary skills, and I call on my chair to say this with me as well, argumentation and debate become a high priority. I believe that this is one of those times when we need to focus on our democratic institutions. Abraham Lincoln thought so during the 1830s, and it was January 27th, 1838. Lincoln was 28 years old when he delivered the Lyceum Address in Springfield, Illinois. In it, he focused on the challenge that those 1830s Americans had with the loss of the memories and passion of those who were then dead, but had lived through and made the American Revolution a reality. Said Lincoln in his Lyceum Address, "They were the pillars of the Temple of Liberty, and now that they have crumbled away, that temple must fall unless we, their descendants, supply their places with other pillars hewn from the solid quarry of sober reason." It is those pillars that we once more have to reinforce in the 2020s, as Lincoln argued they had to do in the 1830s. We do so on this board in a variety of ways. We reinforce those democratic institutions in our new general education policy and the way that is implemented on our 3 universities. We do so as well through a commitment to free and open communication and dialogue on our universities with green fire ratings at all 3 of our universities. And finally, we also do so through the Regents' Cup that Regent Taylor Robeson initiated here on the board while she was still a member of the Arizona Board of Regents. I look forward to working with our provosts and all of you on this committee in the next year. And so we get ourselves underway with approving the minutes here initially. And do we have any changes to those minutes or any questions about the minutes? If not, I move that the committee approve the minutes from the May 27th, 2021 Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction, Kathy Hoffman, we appreciate, as always, that you join this committee and participate in our discussions, and we thank you for the opportunity to hear an update from you and your office. Superintendent Hoffman.
Thank you, Chairman Penley. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Regents. It's wonderful to be here with you all. Today, I want to start with updates about how ADE, or Arizona Department of Education, has been allocating our federal COVID recovery and relief dollars. These are out of our set-aside dollars, which is approximately 10% of the total amount that Arizona is receiving for K-12 education. To date, ADE has allocated approximately $174 million. So again, these are our set-aside funds for statewide initiatives. These funds have been allocated directly to our local school communities, to organizations like community organizations, as well as to our universities, to invest in programs that are supporting and promoting student achievement and supporting our education field. As we have made determinations about how to allocate these funds, we've been very strategic in thinking about how to leverage these funds in ways that are equitable as well as sustainable. We are looking for evidence-based programs, and we want to make sure we're addressing multiple factors that impact our students' academics, including their social emotional well-being, the educator workforce shortages, as well as addressing the digital divide. So as you can imagine, partnering with ABOR and our universities are natural partners in this work, and that's what I really want to highlight today. These investments are intended to help us accelerate student learning, and especially now that we have the most recent statewide assessment data from the AZM2, we know it's even more clear to us now how significant these resources are for our school communities. We all know that COVID-19 has had a tremendous impact on student learning, so I'm very excited to share about some of these updates, and first want to say thank you so much to the ABOR staff, as well as to our university partners for coordinating these efforts. I also want to mention, I really think this is unprecedented to have this type of collaboration between the Arizona Department of Education and our state universities partnering together to support our K-12 system. So I'm going to kind of go university by university with some of these investments. So the first, starting with NAU, we invested $1 million into the Dene Institute to strengthen teaching in our schools that serve Navajo students. They engaged all teachers in long-term professional development to increase content knowledge, curriculum development skills, and capacity to deliver culturally responsive lessons and leadership ability. This investment will allow the program to expand to 40 fellows in 2021. And you're going to hear when I get to the other universities, we did similar investments in their programs that support our Indigenous educator prep programs. But sticking with NAU, the Arizona K-12 Center has been a very trusted partner in providing high quality teacher training and support as they help educators obtain their national board certification. And I know they also work closely with the Teachers Academy to provide our new teachers with mentoring in their first year after graduating from the universities. So with this new investment, they are able to expand the capacity for their educator mentoring program by serving 22 districts and charters. This allows them to fill all the applications that the center received this year. In this program, experienced mentors work directly with new teachers to support them during their first years in the classroom. And we know that this has a significant impact on teacher retention. Shifting over to the University of Arizona. So as I mentioned, similar to the NAU program, we're also investing $1 million in the Indigenous Teacher Education Program. This is also committed to addressing teacher shortages by addressing the number of Native American teachers serving Indigenous students and diverse populations. We know that when teachers understand the context of Indigenous cultures, histories, knowledge systems, and values, the teachers are better equipped to teach our Native American students. Also with the University of Arizona, we've been partnering with their Center for the Recruitment and Retention of Math Educators. They are providing professional development, and they have been able to expand this to be statewide, providing a lot of virtual opportunities. In their conference in January, they had 1,400 educators participate from all 15 counties, and they were able to present 200 virtual sessions. We're also working with the Center for the Recruitment and Retention of Math Educators on a program called Getting Real, or Re-engaging Aspirational Learners. This is specifically to help our schools with re-engaging students that were absent for at least 60% of the last school year. They're also continuing to expand in offering professional development, specifically in the areas of math for educators. Again, this is all virtual and at no cost to our teachers and educators statewide. Then last but not least, for ASU, we also invested $1 million in their program called Preparing Educators for Arizona's Indigenous Communities. This will also train Indigenous educators using the professional pathways models. This will lead to undergraduate degrees that lead to certification in elementary education or dual certification in special education and elementary education. This Pathways degree program is ideal for supporting tribal communities because they can be customized to meet the needs of Indigenous communities and also support the grow your own process of teacher education that is critical to having successful education in our tribal nations. Another exciting partnership with ASU Prep Digital has been the Arizona Virtual Teacher Institute, which I've mentioned here before. And to date, the program has served over 13,000 Arizona teachers and school leaders at over 1,200 schools statewide. So we're very proud and excited that they've been able to serve so many Arizona educators. And then the last program, and I mentioned this before as well, but an update on the ASU Prep Digital program that we're calling Math Momentum. This is also a new program that provides a rigorous, curated math curriculum. So this is designed to target the math skills of 5th through 9th graders using data-driven interventions. One thing I love about this program is that part of their model is working with schools that do not have a certified math teacher and providing that certified, highly trained math teacher. Or if a school is short-staffed, they can provide the extra supports to make sure, again, they have highly trained math teachers working with our students. They also provide enrichment and interventions for our students in math. And so an update on this, we're expected to serve approximately 5,000 students at over 40 schools, and they continue to work to expand this program. And I love too that they're serving several schools in the Phoenix area, but also some of our rural communities, including Bisbee, Tuba City, and Humboldt, which is up in the Prescott Valley. So that is some high-level updates of how we've been spending our ESSER, our COVID recovery and relief federal dollars to support university programs to date, but we have yet to spend any of the funding from the American Rescue Plan. So we still have over $150 million to allocate. There will be a new grant process created that we're in the process of creating, and we will utilize the stakeholder process to allocate the American Rescue Plan dollars as well. I want to just provide a couple quick updates on behalf of our post-secondary coordinator, Andrea Glenn. So this is separate from the federal dollars now to share just a little bit about her work and how the department is supporting college attainment. So first, in terms of increasing the Fafsa completion, we're very proud to support the first ever Fafsa boot camp series. This will be the coalition will host its second annual statewide FAFSA kickoff coming up this month. And college access professionals, counselors, and education nonprofit leaders will be sharing best practices and facilitate discussions with the field on how to continue to navigate the FAFSA the FAFSA application campaigns on their campuses. And so we're very proud of this work to support the FAFSA completion. Andrea is also a part of the Arizona Early College Advancement Team, which is led by the Center for the Future of Arizona. So this is to support statewide early college programs like dual enrollment. And these meetings will continue through July of 2022. Our department will also be convening the first ever post-secondary committee beginning September 21st. They will meet quarterly with over 38 key stakeholders across the state, including high school students, college students, and this will be focused on looking at last year's legislative session post-secondary bills and developing legislative recommendations to support post-secondary awareness, access, and matriculation for all students. And that concludes my report. I know we have a lot of work we're doing, but wanted to make sure you're all aware of these amazing partnerships between the Arizona Department of Education, ABOR, and our universities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Hoffman. I really think you've addressed a very important part of the challenge of these one-time funds, and that is investing in programs that have a potential for sustainability, despite the fact that these funds are one-time. I laud especially what you're doing in trying to deal with our shortage of highly qualified teachers in math and science and other specialized areas. I suspect you have some idea, and I don't recall the number now, of how many of our high schools across the state really lack qualified teachers in those areas. I fear that it may be a larger number than we'd like to know. Is that fair?
It is fair. I don't know the exact number offhand, but definitely, especially in our rural areas, we hear about the revolving door of and the difficulty in recruiting highly having certified math and science teachers.
Yeah, that's been a special problem, and it affects the capability of young people to go on to post-secondary education. It affects our ability to achieve the attainment goals. It's why I've been a huge supporter of what President Crow and Arizona State University have done in the Digital Prep Academy, and really substituting for those qualified teachers with online courses. Of course, that means that we need to assure access to the network, which I believe you and the governor have worked on as well with one-time funds, so I laud you for that too. I still recall being a first-time teacher walking into my classroom. So the fact that you are providing mentors for first-time teachers, it's something that's dear to my heart when I recall how I experienced that first day. Questions or comments from members of the board? If not, thank you very much, Superintendent Hoffman, for that presentation, the comments, and the work that you're doing on behalf of our schools. We appreciate it. With that, I'd like to turn to the issue of admission processes, and I'm going to begin that by turning to John Arnold, our Executive Director, Chad Sampson, and Larry Sandigo, and ask them to provide a presentation in conjunction with representatives of our three universities. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When the board asked us to look at attainment in the state and how we're progressing and how we might improve post-secondary attainment, we started looking at how do we map students through the educational pipeline, really starting at pre-K all the way through the end of the four-year degree process. And so that process is complicated and it has a lot of problems and holes all over the place. But where we thought we should probably start is the piece of that pipeline that we really control. And so what we wanted to do is take a systematic look at the process between high school and admissions into our universities. We've looked very closely at retention and graduation rates once they're in our universities. But we want to look at this piece of the pipe that goes from high school into our universities. And we know we have established barriers between high school and our universities. Those barriers are important and they play an important function towards the ultimate success. And we're not suggesting there shouldn't be barriers, but we do want to see if there's any artificial barriers that we have erected accidentally over the years through bureaucratic steps or lack of communication or whatever else that may be inappropriate in this process. So the first piece of that is, what are the admission requirements? How are those admission requirements being implemented? Are they the right admission requirements? What's the perception of those admission requirements in the K-12 community? Do our students and families and counselors and understand what they are? How are we communicating them? All of those types of questions. So I asked Larry Sandigo and Chad Sampson and some others of our staff to really start working on this issue. I'll let them describe the process they've been through and some of the things they've learned so far, and where we hope to continue this conversation. So,
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Director Arnold, and Chair Manson, Chair Penley, members of the board. Thank you so much for having me here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just make sure you keep that microphone close, Larry.
Okay. Thank you. And as Executive Director Arnold described, we wanted to look at the portion of the admissions process, and we wanted to know from stakeholders, so basically K through 12 leaders, parents, of how is this experienced in real life? Because a lot of times we talk about these policies, we read these policies, but we wanted to know how much is trickling down. And for students that are going through the admissions process right now, what are the barriers that are unintended? What are the ways that we are potentially excluding students that could be successful in our institutions? And we drilled in specifically on the academic requirements. You know, there's lots of processes to admissions. There's the application itself, the application fee, but we wanted to talk about the academic requirements. And so we did an extensive series of stakeholder meetings from folks across the state, from Mojave County, Yuma, Douglas, the mining towns, you know, obviously Phoenix and Tucson, to try to understand how is this experienced in different communities, in charter schools and district schools, so that we could understand what's working well and where could we take a different approach. And so I'm just going to share some of the things that we learned from that. So across the state, there were several things that came up consistently, regardless of rural, urban, well-resourced or not, that I wanted to share with you. And one of the themes that came up related to the academic requirements. So if you look at the handout that I placed near you, you'll see side by side the high school graduation requirements next to ABOR assured admissions requirements. So these are the academic requirements to be admitted into one of our institutions. Now, I highlighted in gray 3 areas where the requirements are different. So it's mainly math, science, and foreign language. And to no surprise, those are the 3 areas that came up in the stakeholder process as being ones that students, families, and schools struggled with. So, for example, you'll notice that to graduate from high school in Arizona, you do not need to take any foreign language or second language. But to be admitted into one of our institutions, you need to have 2 years of the same language. So earlier it was brought up about teacher shortage. And so for that reason and for a variety of other reasons, there are schools right now in Arizona that do not offer all of these courses all the time to their students. So what we're talking about are students that don't even have access to all of our requirements to be assured admission into our institution. Or we have students that they find out too late that they needed to have taken a second language, or they needed to have taken a 4th-year math course that required Algebra 2 as a prerequisite. And so a lot of times what we heard is that these students, even out of the gate, are counting themselves out. They look at the website, they look at the admissions requirements, and they say, well, I don't meet that. I didn't take foreign language, or I didn't take the right kind of math, or I took a different type of science. And so those are the things that we heard come up. And consistently, schools asked us, could you do earlier outreach? Could you early on educate families about what courses need to take in high school to be eligible to be admitted for assured admission? And as one of the high schools noted, never mind talking about first generation college students. Many of these are first in their families to go to high school. And I don't want to overstate the issue. There are not that many high schools that don't offer at all the Core 16. There are not that many places in Arizona that are full of first-time high school students in their families. But these students who are on the margins, they tend to be from the communities that you would think about, that we consistently see differences. Rural, under-resourced, high poverty, students of color that these are the ones that are struggling. And so the schools asked us, how can we partner together to educate students on here's what you need to take, so that if a student, they don't find themselves in the situation of juniors and seniors saying, I didn't know I had to take foreign language. Now I can't go to the university. The other thing that schools asked us about was, could there be flexibility in terms of how these academic requirements are met? So for example, AP Computer Science, they said, can that qualify as a fourth year math class? It has a lot of advanced math components. This is a thing that interests students. But the way that our system is set up is that some of these courses are not going to count. They also asked, could there be greater clarity and education on the process by which courses can get approved? So for example, one of the science courses that students have to take, or the options, is biology. But what if a high school has a lot of students interested in agricultural science? That process by which they can submit their agricultural science class to be counted as biology, for example. They said once the person that knows that information leaves, there's a lack of understanding of how that happens. And these high schools are adapting to what the needs and desires are of their students that may not be as straightforward as the ones that we have in our policy. So in terms of the academic requirements, those are the things that we heard consistently from folks across the state. But we know that anecdotal evidence isn't everything. And so we worked with the universities to find out more of the data related to admissions for our resident students. And before I go into the data part, I did want to thank Annika Olson, Casey Urquidez, Matt Lopez, and Kent Hopkins for all of their help in compiling this data. If you look at the handout in the bottom portion, we have our fall 2020 admissions data. So what you see is that if an Arizona student applies to one of our institutions, they have an overwhelming chance of being admitted. So the policy does allow for flexibility, and you can see that come through with the over 90% resident admissions. You can also see that most of the students that end up enrolling in our institutions have in fact met all of the Core 16 academic requirements for admission. And lastly, what you'll also able to see in the last two rows is that there is a correlation between whether the students have met all of those Core 16 requirements or not, whether they return to the university after their first year. And so there is a need for those academic requirements. And so the universities are certainly to be lauded for doing what they can, for working with students to get to yes, those who are from Arizona. And we see that in the numbers. But there's a long road between a student starting their high school career and ending up submitting that application. And so those are one of the things that we want to continue working on, is how do we prepare more students so that once they are eligible, they know what makes them eligible for admission, so that they have equal access to these courses regardless of where they live in the state or what type of school they attend, so that when they do submit an application to our institutions, that they are able to be successful. And we'll continue engaging with stakeholders about different parts of the admissions process to see whether other parts have presented, again, artificial barriers or ones that are potentially excluding students that could be successful. So with that, I'll end, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Larry, for that presentation. Comments on these issues from members of the board or our presidents or provosts? Provost Gonzalez?
Yeah, it was the
Get
data
close
that.
to the microphone, please. You have to just pull it over to you and
Okay, thank you.
stick it in your face practically.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, it was illuminating to see these data. They certainly track our own perceptions of the fact that we are providing very broad access, so that there aren't big gaps in our ability to provide access to students, and that the enrollment criteria are actually playing an important role in terms of promoting success. And so I think figuring out what we now do in partnership with K-12, and I don't think it's all on K-12, I think it's also on us as well to sort of figure out how we move forward to increase college preparedness for all of the students in the state.
Thank you, Provost Gonzalez. Yes, Regent Herbold.
I have a question in regard to an estimate on the percent of high school graduates in Arizona each year that achieve the Core 16.
So I don't know the exact.
Larry, bring that microphone real close to you, just like I was telling Provost Gonzalez.
I don't know the exact answer to your question. In fall 2020, spring 2020, there were about 68,000 high school graduates in Arizona. And that's one of the data points that we were trying to find out, is how many have graduated from high school but do not meet the Core 16. And that endeavor has proven more difficult than we'd like, but it normally tracks according to county, race and ethnicity, and income level in terms of the percentage of students that are completing all of the Core 16 requirements.
Yep, that percent would be very meaningful to the universities in terms of the potential here. So I think we'll try to really find that out. It's be a key statistic.
Executive Director Arnold.
Yeah, and I would ask Chad to comment on this as well, because I'm going to throw out some numbers that are probably wrong. So we tried to do a study on this about 5 years ago. Found the data to be very, very difficult to identify. We made some broad estimates and came up with a number, but I'm not going to quote it because I don't believe it. What we do know is the percent of high school graduates that enroll in a four-year degree program. And it's relatively low. 25% of our high school graduates pursue a four-year degree. Compared to national numbers.
At any school.
Yes, that's any school in the country. I don't know if we have international schools, but I'm assuming that's a very small number. Around 25% of our high school graduates pursue a four-year degree. So I would assume that those that qualify for four-year degree admissions is probably somewhere in the same neighborhood. President Crow.
We have a rough calculation that we haven't done in a while, but if you look at who's qualified coming out of Arizona high schools, meeting both the course requirement and the grade attainment requirement, it's around 30%.
Yeah.
Chair Manson.
Well, I was going to ask the same question, but
Okay.
so if you've got resident student admissions rates in the low to mid 90s for each of the three schools, but you're only addressing 25% of the population, I mean, that's your limiting factor right there. And it doesn't sound, so you're saying that, President Crow, you're saying that 30% of
Meet the full qualification on graduating from high school for admission to the university.
Okay. So how do students get admitted with a deficiency, and what does that path look like?
Conditional admission. So I think the provost could comment on that.
Yeah. I think there, the full application is reviewed, and there are opportunities to get admitted, but I think the other question is, what about all those students who have counted themselves out and aren't applying? I mean, that's,
Right.
so I sort of think, you know, it doesn't look like the problem is with these criteria. It looks like the problem is with all of those other students who are not prepared and, you know, anecdotally will say that they're counting themselves out very early in their high school education.
We're also one of only a handful of states that has only a high admission standard set of public institutions.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So in Pennsylvania, you can go to Slippery Rock State, which has a different admission requirement than the university, than Temple, which has a different admission requirement than Penn State, which has a State College, which has a different admission requirement than the 13 regional campuses at Penn State, for instance. So there'd be, just among those 4 institutional types that I mentioned, there are 4 admission standards.
In fact, President Crow, that's why in my introductory comments, I raised the differentiation in states and used North Carolina as an example.
Right.
Because there are clearly differences in admission requirements from UNC Asheville to UNC Chapel Hill, from Winston-Salem State University to NC State. That's not something we've done in this state. So this is an issue I think that the board has to address, is whether indeed differential admission standards can be dealt with. But at the same time, then I think we have to ask how we support those students and make students who aren't so well qualified coming out of high school success in college, so that in fact we graduate college students who have the capability, the knowledge, and the skills to really meet the workforce needs of the 21st century. So there are multiple challenges built into this. Other comments from members of the board or representatives of our 3 universities? If not, I'm going to turn back to what, I'm sorry, go ahead. Provost Pugliese.
Thank you. Building on your point, just wanted to point out that we do in fact differentiate perhaps in the way that we operate with our delegated authority around admission. And in our case, we're very interested in pursuing, as you suggested, a greater understanding of how we can effectively support the students that we admit with different types of deficiencies. We see in our own data that it matters what is the nature of the deficiency in terms of how students fare in their pathway through the university.
Thank you very much. Based on your comments, Provost, as well as the questions Larry asked in his presentation, it seems to me that we have a number of issues for this board to address. Among them are improving communication and education on the core competencies themselves, and what students really need to be prepared. We also need to look at whether there are alternative ways that students may satisfy those requirements, or alternatives in terms of the requirements themselves. And finally, I think we have an issue of how we support students with deficiencies. You see that clearly in the data that you presented, Larry, that is an enormous challenge for any student who has even one deficiency when they reach the university. So here's what I would suggest to us as a board, that we call on John Arnold and Ched Sampson and Larry Sandigo to really set up a work group from the office that addresses one or more of those 3 issues that I just raised a moment ago. We have over the last few years, rather than setting up task force, just really had a few regents along with staff and representatives of our universities in kind of work groups that exist for a short period of time. And once they've completed their work, their analysis and their recommendations, they disappear along the way. It makes for an easier approach, I think, than setting up something more formal. So, John, I would just look to you to take those 3 issues I raised and turn that into some sort of work group or work groups. Does that make sense to you? Or
Mr. Chairman, it does, and I appreciate the assignment very much, and we'll look to Chad and Larry and Helen and others to follow up on that, and we'll get busy on it. And I really appreciate the support of the universities in looking at this and making sure we're not creating an artificial barrier for Arizona students is really the goal here.
Perfect. Thanks, John. The next item on our agenda is a request from Arizona State University with its recommendations that the board approve a new 2-year academic program in organizational leadership to be offered solely online and in partnership with the United States Navy for enlisted servicemen and women during the 2021-2022 academic year. In conjunction with this request, the committee will engage in a moment in a discussion of this issue, but I want to turn to, I assume, Provost Gonzalez, who's going to present the item.
So, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to take this opportunity to formally introduce Provost Gonzalez to the board, since this is the first time that some on the board have.
You're right. I introduced Provost Pugliese, but I failed to do that. Perhaps, Nancy, it's because I've known you so long.
So Provost Gonzalez is a product of Arizona, grew up in Arizona, was a Regents Scholar at Arizona State University before getting her PhD at the University of Washington, doing her postdoc at Stanford University. She's been a very successful faculty member here, senior faculty member, distinguished faculty member here, and has been a fantastic dean of natural sciences here. She's now provost of what we call the academic enterprise, the chief of the academic enterprise at ASU, which has 150,000 degree-seeking students across hundreds of degree programs, across almost 200 academic units, 20 colleges, give or take. They come and go these days, and so we have given to Nancy, to Provost Gonzalez, a tremendous assignment, which is to advance this very complex institution at this moment of accelerating demand on the institution, accelerating expectations both online and on campus. And so she has stepped into this role. Let me just remind Regents also, at the same time that we have launched 2 parallel enterprises, the Knowledge Enterprise led by Sally Morton and the Learning Enterprise led by Maria Anguiano. And we're very excited that Nancy is in this role and moving things forward. And it is a job which is, I don't want to say complicated because that would be an understatement. She is at the belly of the beast, dealing with the faculty, dealing with the evolution of the faculty and the design of the faculty. And I mean that respectfully. I mean, in a sense of, faculty members are unique in our society in a lot of ways, and they require a care and feeding and attention that is just very significant. And Nancy is a natural at that, and I'm looking forward to great things going forward.
Thank you, President Crow. And you didn't mention the fact that Nancy has to deal with the deans, and all provosts have to do that. And dealing with the deans has its own special challenge.
The deans, yes. She also has to deal with the president of the university. So.
And so Provost Gonzalez, pardon me.
Plus she has to deal with Michael.
Oh, of course.
This she knows.
That is all true.
And so with apologies, Provost Gonzalez, for not recognizing you at the beginning of this, I turn to you.
That's fine, thank you. I have to just take this, given the topics for today, I just want to say 2 things, which is I am the product of Arizona education. I grew up in rural Arizona. I was on a Regents scholarship, so I benefited from scholarships for students who were first generation and came from families who didn't understand or couldn't otherwise afford education. And I also grew up in a mining town, Miami, Arizona, at a time when the executives of the mines were very focused on bringing good teachers to the mining communities. And I had excellent math teachers every year of high school. And that has played a very important role in my life. So these are all critically important topics. So yes, thank you for allowing us to present this degree today, this associate's degree in organizational leadership. You described it in broad strokes. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to partner with the U.S. Navy in their efforts to launch their own capacity to develop their own community college system for service personnel. This degree would allow us to serve our access mission and also to serve the nation, offer service to the nation by giving this opportunity to service personnel in the Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard. This is part of a program that they have reached out to several other universities, including community colleges, who they saw had the capacity to help them launch the degree. So the idea would be that we would build on our existing BA degree in organizational leadership, which is an interdisciplinary degree. Then service personnel, as they enlist, can also enlist to take this degree online. So it has the capacity to scale at a national level. And they also have the ability to transition from the AA degree into a BA in organizational leadership. And this degree is also a very flexible degree, so they could also transition from that flexible degree to other BA pathways. So we're very excited about this opportunity. There is a time sensitivity to it. We were part of a call for proposals. The proposal has gone in, been very well received, but we do need an answer for them in October so that we can get this launched with them. So, we're hoping that we're happy that we can have this conversation now, even though I know there are broader questions about universities and AA degrees that we need to consider as well.
Thank you, Provost Gonzalez. President Crow?
2 points of information. So regents may be aware, new regents will be informed by this, that Air University, which we were just recently visited by, the Air Force 3-star and his entire command structure, Air University is now powered by Arizona State University, and it's a part of an ongoing relationship at the request of the Defense Department for us to be more engaged with multiple services in helping them to evolve their learning activities. And so this is a piece of a series of things that we've been doing, working with the Joint Chiefs themselves. I've had meetings with them, meetings with the leaders of the Navy, the Chief Learning Officer of the Navy, others along the way. And so we looked into our own history and saw that we had always had the authority to give associate's degrees and used to, but we hadn't recently. And so we said, okay, well, let's just renew our accreditation, which has been done, and then be ready to do it should there come an occasion. So it should go without saying that we're not interested in going into the community college business or the things that community colleges do. But nonetheless, it is important for us to be flexible enough to be of service to the nation when the nation asks us to be of service, which is where we are. And there are some other things that we can talk about in another part of another discussion about what this means in terms of other things, but this is the specific proposal for right now.
Thanks, President Crow. Your comments strike me as being completely consistent with what you've articulated for ASU as a national service university, both what you're doing for the Air Service University, as well as the specific proposal for the U.S. Navy. Comments from members of the board? Regent Schupman.
Just to add to President Crow's comment, within the military, there is a high demand and encouragement for airmen from the 18-year-old up to pursue continuing education. So this is a huge opportunity that exists for all three of our universities to engage with all the services of the United States in this way. And I think by the great work that we're doing with Air University and this opportunity and the work that President Robbins is pursuing down in Sierra Vista will make us a lead state in offering these kinds of services. And these are great young people that are in our military, and I had guys loading bombs on airplanes that were PhDs. So education is highly prized in the military. So it's a great opportunity, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Schupman. Those are appropriate comments, I believe, and you're the right person to have made them. Regent Mata, followed by Regent Herbold.
Thank you, Chair Penley. So I support the same thing that Regent Schupman say, especially because this, our military soldiers and also spouses or family, this is an online, they're always sent on TDY, which is temporary duty, or if they are PCSing for the next station, this is just something that just fall into place. It is very hard when they keep moving and they keep, sending our soldiers to different assignments. And this is fantastic. So I applaud, and especially because they have contacted other college or university, and we are the one, ASU, open the door as a continued support to our military and family. Thank you.
Regent Herbold?
I'm interested in how you're going to organize this. Who's going to be the individual that will be responsible among the faculty to make this a success?
It's my pleasure to present to you our proposal that presents the design that we've developed for our General Studies program, which is a successor to the current program that we have in alignment with Policy 210. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got to this point of presenting this framework to you today. We embraced quite enthusiastically the opportunity to build the best possible program for NAU students. Indeed, we started a process of examining and preparing to revise our current general education program that we call Liberal Studies prior to the adoption of Policy 2210. Our current program's been in place since 1999. It's a long time ago. It's undergone some minor revisions along the way. That program, the program that we call Liberal Studies, was designed at that time around a core set of learning outcomes that included knowledge areas and essential skills. And as you'll see, it had our current program already had some alignment with the expectations of the regents that were reflected in Policy 2210. We also, alongside that program, had a diversity requirement for all of our baccalaureate graduates. There was recognition among our faculty that it was due time to take a close look at our liberal studies program at general education for baccalaureate graduates of NAU. And we had undertaken our internal program review process pursuant to that agenda. And that process involved an extensive self-study that utilized data that we'd been collecting and analyzing that assessed directly some of the learning outcomes in the program. We also had an external consultation or review as a part of that process. And that, by the way, that review was conducted in 2018, and then in the fall of 2019, we assembled a task force that was led by faculty, by the faculty director of our liberal studies program, Dr. Jeffrey Berglund, who's a professor in our Department of English. And they were charged to take forward the recommendations that emerged from that program review process and propose some revisions, a deep revision of our liberal studies program. Fast forward to today, we are now presenting to you a program that reflects the vision of our faculty for general education for baccalaureate graduates, building on the insights gained from the success of our previous program and what we learned through the program review process. And at the same time, I hope you'll see fulfills the Regent's vision for general education for baccalaureate graduates in Arizona University, and particularly, of course, at NAU. We really appreciate the opportunity that your initiative gave us to think about general education for baccalaureate degree seekers. We appreciate the fact that you have validated the critical importance of that and that you have invited each of the universities to create a distinctive program to reflect the principles that your policy it requires. So a little bit about our program, and I think we can go to the next slide. Thank you. As I mentioned, the current program that we have, what we call liberal studies, already aligns with many aspects of your policy. Nonetheless, we leveraged this opportunity to create a program that does a few things that we think are important. One is it reflects the distinctive aspirations that we have for academic excellence. Secondly, we think that it serves our students, based, that is to say, on our understanding of who our students are and what we hope that they achieve. Thirdly, it complements the design of our degree programs, which have for nearly over 20 years at this point, embedded within them writing requirements as well as capstone requirements. And it's designed now, the proposal, as you will see, to develop the 4 habits of mind that, in combination with the knowledge and skills developed through general studies and in the major, that we think are essential for our graduates' professional success and for their potential to contribute as engaged, productive citizens. With this program, our students will have multiple opportunities to develop and practice essential competencies so they're well prepared for their professional achievement and to contribute to their communities. One of the things that we did with this program design was to shift or incorporate the diversity requirement into the program. This addresses a few things that I want to highlight. First is I believe that it addresses the Regent's interest in intercultural competency. Secondly, it reflects a particular distinctiveness of our program, in highlighting in particular the Indigenous peoples requirement that we've got stranded through our program. And we're very pleased that it will reduce the complexity for the student, that we think will enhance the momentum of our students toward graduation. Information literacy and critical thinking are a part of every single education course, as you can see from the course design requirements, and are linked to the subject matter of the knowledge areas. We also reconceived some of the essential skills that we had in our legacy program, and that is to develop civil discourse through writing, speaking, and collaboration. One of these skills are required to be embedded in the American institutions requirement that we have now incorporated into the design of the program. The habits of mind are also intrinsic to the design of the courses and integrated with the skills that students will develop as they pursue this program. Our approach to developing this course, or this program, excuse me, was really a collaborative one that was driven by faculty, students, and benefited from our collaboration with colleagues at ASU and University of Arizona. As I mentioned earlier, a task force was formed through the auspices of our faculty senate with the leadership of, I want to credit Senior Vice Provost now, Lori Dixon, and her team, but it was led by students and was also involved a lot of student participation. The faculty involved in the design of this program all had extensive experience teaching in our current liberal studies program. That group, as I mentioned earlier, was asked to prepare a proposal for a new program, a successor program to the liberal studies program, and they did do that, and that proposal went through 2 extensive rounds of feedback on our campus, through which faculty and students, chairs and deans all had ample opportunities to give feedback in response to those proposals. The first happened in October of 2020. And then after a slight revision of the board policy 2210, once again in the early part of 2021. Ultimately, the proposal was adopted by the faculty senate by a strong vote of 91% in February of 2021. We also participated with our colleagues at the two other universities in the development of the tri-university approach to assessment for general education, and we're looking forward to the process by which we'll be assessing first the writing skills aspect of that in the coming summer of '22. And right now, we have put together, with the collaboration of our faculty senate, an implementation task force, the Curriculum and Assessment Coordinating Committee. They are currently working on some plans, really some scenarios for implementation. Our next steps are to focus on implementation, and given the ambition and complexity of implementing a program of this nature, we anticipate that our implementation of this program will occur in a phased way. We want to ensure that we pace our implementation in such a way that we will have ample capacity to address all the aspects of implementation that require attention and not compromise in any way the quality of the program that results. Among the kinds of things that we have to consider in thinking about the implementation of the program are its interface and impact on the curricula for our many majors. We have to develop a protocol and really create the capacity for a comprehensive course review process. We also want to design focused faculty development and involve our faculty in advance of the implementation in faculty development that will ensure that they're well prepared to deliver this course in the best possible way. We have to do a great deal of planning around how we're going to offer the courses with adequate capacity to serve our students so that they can progress to degree. And there's lots of infrastructure that supports any kind of program like this. We have to think about the infrastructure that we have for our academic catalog, for degree audit, and also for advising, among other things. At the same time, as you know, we're doing many other things. Most significantly, we are beginning a process of strategic road mapping led by our president, President Cruz Rivera. And our implementation will be occurring simultaneously with the unfolding of that process. So I'm expecting that we'll be maybe adapting our implementation to be as well aligned with that as is possible. We also have to examine the intersections of the competencies in this program with the competencies that we're developing in our majors, and think through the implications of that for our ongoing assessment program. We have a robust assessment of student learning outcomes focused on the major, and we want to connect those to how we assess the general education program as well. We are in the very beginning phases of considering what we're going to do going forward regarding a learning management system, and so we'll need to consider that as we plan the implementation of this program. And lastly, we are going to be paying extra attention to the tools and strategies that we have in place to support student navigation and progress through the program, so that we maximize the potential for students to be retained and progress to graduation in 4 years. We look forward to continuing our work with the Tri-University Assessment Project, and after we'll look forward to the pilot that will take place this coming summer, focused on written communication. And lastly, we are going to develop a strategic plan for communicating with and engaging with our students so that they understand the purpose and value of this program as a part of their education with Northern Arizona University. There's a tradition in some ways, I suppose you could say, of students being encouraged to focus primarily on their major and maybe not think of their general education as being quite as integral to their baccalaureate experience. And we're committed to trying to change that and help them to understand how pivotal the learning that takes place in the context of the general studies program and at the intersection of the general studies program and the major is for their development and ultimately their future success. Thank you for the opportunity to present this proposal to you. I hope you will find that it meets your expectations.
Provost Pugliese, it is we who should thank you and your faculty for the hard work on this. When I spoke almost 3 years ago, less a month, at NAU introduced the idea of revising general education, I think I said at that point it would be complex, it would be difficult. This would be a hard thing for us to do, but it was something that American institutions had struggled with all through the last century. And I discussed at the time the controversies surrounding general education. But what you have brought us, I am really pleased to see. I thank you for that. You've introduced many of the elements that I would have hoped for. I wish you could comment on two that I had mentioned 3 years ago. One is how this particular general education is distinctively Northern Arizona universities. And secondly, where you're headed in terms of assessment. And as I recall 3 years ago, those were two things I asked for as well as we undertook the development of the policy. Do something, yes, that is within the context of the policy that we will develop, I believe I said, but do so in a way that distinctively shows a student what NAU is all about, and also to assess students and make sure that the learning has actually occurred.
Thank you. In answer to your first question about what is distinctive about our program that reflects the identity and mission of NAU, I would say at least, I suppose, three things. One is, I mentioned earlier, I think that what we've done with our embedded diversity perspectives is something that reflects some longstanding commitments on the part of our faculty and their work with our students. And we took this opportunity to think very carefully about that and redefine those with a forward-looking perspective about the world that our students will enter as they graduate and navigate their careers. And we've redefined them in a way that captures the range of diversity learning that our faculty are, I think, quite distinctively committed to in a very deep way. That includes global and U.S. ethnic diversity. We've adopted an intersectional identities component, and then, as I mentioned, the indigenous identity, the indigenous peoples requirement reflects NAU's commitment to be a leading university serving Native Americans and Native American communities. So I think that's one piece that's quite distinctive. And I'm confident that our faculty will develop the learning opportunities in relation to those learning outcomes in a way that reflects NAU's particular place in Arizona as well. The second thing that I'd mention is that this program design continues some structural element that we think is important and that we had incorporated in our current program, the Liberal Studies program, which is the integration or articulation between the General Studies program and the major. That is to say, we don't think of them as two buckets, but we think of them as sort of an ecosystem of learning or a web of learning that students navigate, and that can therefore kind of amplify or reinforce learning and encourage students to integrate the experiences that they have across different courses. So the essential skills and some of the other competencies, especially the habits of mind, are things that students will have an opportunity to develop both within the general education program per se, as well as in their experience through the majors. Lastly, again, one of the things that we've done historically that we will continue to do with this program is to incorporate some of the learning elements in the general studies program in the capstone courses in our majors. And that is a good segue to answering your second question about assessment, which is we have traditionally asked our academic programs to engage in a regular kind of process, incremental and feasible, but so that it is practicable, of assessing learning outcomes for the major, as well as those learning outcomes that are kind of drawn from the general studies program into the majors. So I expect that we will continue to assess the learning from the general studies program in that particular way, as well as participating in the tri-university effort to assess some of the core outcomes in the program as we go forward.
Perfect, thank you. Chair Manson?
Thank you. Provost Pugliese, I really, really want to say how pleased I am with this draft and this program as it currently stands. I think it really, truly does meet the goals that we had established through the new policy. There's two things that I particularly want to call out, and one question I have for you. And the first is the American institutions requirement, and I am thrilled to see that you have managed to require all of those items within that 3-credit course. I think one of the things that we were trying to get past was the ability of students to kind of cherry pick their way through the process and avoid the things that they really didn't think they were interested in. I think that this American institutions requirement that you all have established really hits the nail on the head as far as what the board was looking for. And I think it will serve your students incredibly well. The second thing that I would like to call out is the civil discourse requirements. I'm incredibly pleased to see that there is at least one in particular required in the American institutions portion, but the fact is that throughout somewhere in that general education program, your students are going to be required to experience all three, the written, speaking, and collaboration and teamwork civil discourse, because I think all three of those are things that we are sorely deficient in our current environment. And I think it is certainly our obligation to train those students to come into the broader world with the skill sets to be able to make progress forward. So thank you. The final thing that I'd like to ask, and this again is trying to get towards that, limiting the ability to cherry pick your way through, the general education requirements, having 2 children who are not that far removed from graduating from college. I watched that process, and I watched I'm gonna pick the one where the professor is easy, and I don't have any interest in the course, but I know I can get an A. I'm curious as to how NAU plans to approach the number of courses within the general education program. I think one of the things that's happened is the general education programs have gotten a little bit like closet space. You expand, you put in, you just continue to expand until you're out of room. And since there is no real wall, they just continue to expand. So I'd be interested in hearing what NAU's plans are towards providing a more directed and perhaps limited path through the general education program.
Thank you. And again, I want to credit our faculty for the things that you're seeing in the program that please you. It's really their design. First, I also want your comment reminds me of something else that I think is a distinctive feature of this program, in as much as it reflects the particular commitments of our faculty. I was talking about this a little earlier with Chad, that our faculty are very, very passionate about engaging our students in critical issues that are important to our communities, the U.S. society, as well as the world. And of course, as what you have mentioned earlier, has become increasingly challenging for our faculty, given the degree to which there's polarization around many of these issues. And so I think they embrace the civil discourse learning outcomes in an organic way, because they really want to be able to engage our students with these key issues and develop our students' capacity to do that in their lifetimes in a manner that is civil and that supports our democratic institutions. So you have you've asked a question about something that's always a challenge in a university, which is that all of our faculty and units think that they have something very important to offer our students. And sometimes in the context of the internal economy, if you will, or the perception thereof in the academy, there's an interest in getting a footprint in the curriculum, especially a general studies curriculum that all of our students take. So we're very mindful of that. We've gone through that before. And indeed, as you observed, over time, there is a tendency to, I call it a CREAT curriculum. And so part of the task of this implementation group is to take that question on. There is recognition of the disadvantages, the many disadvantages of having too many choices for students. On the one level, it's about navigation and momentum. It's also a challenge for the institution in terms of coordinating our planning and ensuring we have the right capacity available to serve students. And it also creates challenges for faculty to ensure that what's happening in all these courses is aligned with what our expectations are. So I can't give you a very specific answer about how we're going to do that, except I will anticipate that the process of course review will be rigorous. It will require quite a bit of effort on the part of faculty and departments and commitments as well to offer a certain capacity of courses on a regular basis so that we can align what we're offering students with the students that come to us. And those things will be kind of inherent deterrents to over-enthusiasm about getting involved. And we have some new elements here that are going to be stretches for some of our units, and that might be basically something that leads to some self-selection, like the Indigenous peoples requirement is not something that every unit on campus has the capacity to address in their courses. So. And then the newest element, the most novel, I suppose you could say, with this program is the American institutions element. And at this point, we're thinking that there's probably 2 areas on campus that have the best fit to offer the best possible courses in these areas. And that would be our Politics and International Affairs department, where we have political science, and history. And that's something that, again, this task force that's of faculty with some staff that will help facilitate are looking at how we're going to go about inviting proposals to fulfill this requirement and determining what makes sense for us in consideration of all those things that we must take into account before we make a commitment to go forward.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. President Cruz Rivera.
I would just like to add to the excellent work that has been presented by Provost Pugliese, and that was led in great part by Senior Vice Provost Laurie Dixon, that in addition to being very rigorous in the way that we pursue the development of the courses that will be available to fulfill the general education requirements, we also have, as part of our strategic road mapping effort, 3 areas of work that will help provide some guardrails to ensure that we are providing the type of academic excellence in these courses that we aspire to. The student success piece of it will also be a part of how we develop these courses and we support them. And then very importantly is the good stewardship of financial resources. As we look at how best to configure the optimal menu of courses that satisfy these requirements in a way that will be fiscally responsible for the university.
Thank you, President Cruz Rivera. Other comments and questions? Regent Dave, did you have a comment or question? No? Anyone else on the board? Seeing no hands and hearing none, I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval of the Northern Arizona University's proposed general education program framework. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion does pass. Provost Pugliese, President Cruz Rivera, I just laud you for what you've brought forward. I concur exactly with what Chair Manson said about the American Institutions course. It seems to move very much toward what I was suggesting in my opening comments today, as I quoted President Lincoln. As we all know who've studied the 1830s, we know it was a time of anti-immigrant sentiment. It was a time when the rule of law was under attack. It was a time, as President Lincoln noted, when the original pillars of American democracy, the founders and the revolutionaries, had died and passed away. And it was up to a new generation to really assure that the pillars of our democratic institutions survived and did well in preserving this democracy. So some have suggested that we are at that time once again, and so we appreciate what you've done. I hope as well as you work on implementation, particularly of the institutions course, that you will assure, and this is built into the policy as well, that the issues of argumentation and debate and giving students a chance to openly make the case and make the case against something, that is practiced as well. So students learn that skill that is so critical today to evaluate knowledge, to determine which facts are really facts. So with that, I laud you, I thank you, and we're about to take a break. And if I could ask us to get back underway at 3:45 after we take a break, and we'll see if we can finish 5 minutes earlier later today, because we have a few more items on the agenda yet. Thanks, everybody. The next topic on our agenda is the Arizona Innovation Alliance update, and I'm going to call on the individuals who are a part of the alliance to come forward and sit at the table, and we'll let each of you introduce yourselves and explain your role. I'm going to turn to Rich Stanley to start here, but then we can go to any of the others of you who are at the table with us. Rich?
Thank you, Mr. Penley. We're happy to be here today. We've got let's see, 4 of the 7 members of the team, the core team for the Arizona Innovation Alliance. And I hope this will be the first of a number of reports that we'll be doing to you about progress that we're making on a variety of fronts. I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about the Innovation Alliance and some of its goals, and then we'll get to some introductions as we go along, and other people will be participating in this. So we could get to the next slide, please. There's a lot of words on these slides. I'm not going to go over all of them. They're available for you to read later on at your convenience and at your interest level. I'm just going to go over some of the high points of what's here. The goals for the Innovation Alliance, there are three goals. One is to improve student success and access. I think access is probably the most important within this area, because as the conversations that took place earlier in this meeting about the numbers of students that attend higher education from Arizona is just not where it should be. And there are things that I think we can do as 3 universities together in providing information and putting together programs that can improve pathways, improve the numbers of students that are eligible and are moving along. Second is getting people to graduation. That includes a lot of student support activities. And if I look back at the University Innovation Alliance, which is sort of the inspiration for what we've done, for what the Arizona Innovation Alliance is, although I think this is more than what the University Innovation Alliance is working on specific programs that target specific groups of students to improve their ability to get through and get to graduation points. And then lastly, and this is something which really is not part of the mandate for the University Innovation Alliance, is to seek ways to make education more affordable. And part of that is making education, the provision of education, more efficient so it can be made more affordable. Just simply lowering the price without improving the services just is not the way we want to go. If we get the next slide, please. And the intent was to have Barry Brummond, who is arrived virtually, and I don't know if we can get him up on the screen or not. But there's Barry, excellent.
Thank you, Rich. Good afternoon, Chair Penley, Regents, Presidents, and colleagues. I'm Barry Brummond. I'm the University of Arizona Liaison to the Arizona Innovation Alliance. I'd call your attention to the word at the very top of the slide in brown, and that is innovation. This is the slide that describes the strategy, the process, the approach that we're taking for innovation in the AIA. And there's 4 different steps to that process. The first is sharing, and that involves sharing data of every sort. The universities are awash in information, as you know, from death by PowerPoint at committee and board meetings. This is information on students, organizations, processes, programs, outcomes, information of every sort. The second step in the process, innovate, is really fundamentally the scientific method applied to the state of Arizona. We're fortunate in the Arizona Innovation Alliance to have 3 of the largest and most innovative universities in the country. And over the course of the last decade or so, the 3 of us collectively have experimented with hundreds of programs in support of the 3 goals that Rich had mentioned on the first slide, in support of access, student success, and affordability. So we have, from a scientific perspective, an extensive set of experiments that we've effectively run at our institutions in the recent past. Last is diffusion, and I'm taking these slightly out of order. And that's fundamentally, I think, what Chair Penley originally had charged the Arizona Innovation Alliance with doing. Work across organizational lines. The sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the individual parts. And so sharing the results of all of those experiments that we have each innovated with across the 3 organizational lines is an important component of the process. Finally, scale. Resources in the state and at the universities are finite. So in those cases where we find success in support of access or student success or affordability, it is critical for the state and for each of the 3 universities that we do that at scale.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Barry. My name is Annika Olson, and I serve as the AIA Liaison from Northern Arizona University. Thank you for allowing us to give you an update today. After we've been meeting together, the initial core team, since January at this point, and we have had some robust conversation around our 3 goals and how to organize. And so the core team, and on the next couple slides, you'll meet the rest of the core team. We all are in place as of Tuesday. So our 3 fellows at each institution, Brittany, our amazing assistant director, and then the liaisons as well. And so we're all on board and we're ready to go, but our work started months ago. And it's really going to start taking off in the next handful of months as we establish our student success teams. These will be teams at each institution that will really double click into different areas of those goals as initiatives come to light. We are excited to get those teams established in the next month or 2, fingers crossed, right? Maybe sooner. And then from there, really take those goals and bring them to light in terms of different projects. And we're going to highlight in just a minute one of those projects that's already well underway. But as projects are decided upon with collaboration from all 3 of us, we will develop project teams of experts in different areas, subject matter experts on each campuses to work collaboratively to really bring to light and share data and information about what is really working ultimately for the students, because that is our focus. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brittany to share a little bit on the next slide. So there's all of us. You've already met us. We can click to the next one and meet the really amazing fellows that we have.
Thank you so much, Annika, and good afternoon, and thank you, Chairman Penley, and to the Regents for the opportunity to introduce myself and really share our progress to date. As Annika stated, I am Brittany Polk. I am the new Assistant Director for the AIA. I've been here as of mid-June. So I have 12 years of experience in working in higher education, but most recently and prior to my appointment, I'd spent the last 6 years at ASU. Working in project management, really supporting and working with leadership from the provost office in the advancement of university-wide student success initiatives. So during my time at ASU, I was also appointed as the ASU Fellow for the UIA, working really across the 11 member institutions of the UIA to scale innovations, to share promising practices that really help us to increase degree attainment among historically marginalized student population. So I'll just say that through my experience, I've seen firsthand the impact that a model like the UIA can have on student success. With a shared mission, a unified commitment to learn from one another, how that can improve the student success and move the needle. So as a first generation student myself, I'm very, very grateful to have the opportunity to take part and contribute to this newly formed alliance. It's my pleasure to introduce our new fellows. Some are with us, and so I'll start with Mary, but some are joining virtually today. So fellows are really there to be highly immersed in our campus work and play a critical role, so to speak, as our eyes and ears on campus in coordinating and managing AIA efforts. So I'll let Mary introduce herself.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Venezia. I have currently been serving at the University of Arizona for over 12 years. I'm also Chief of Staff in Enrollment Management, but I have over 15 years of experience in the tri-university system, some at NAU, where I'm a proud alum, short-term at ASU, and most of my time has been spent in Tucson. I also am first gen. I also sat at this table once as a student regent where I fell in love with access and student engagement and have dedicated my career to that since then. So I'm really excited to be here and be part of this new initiative.
Thank you, Mary. We have two of our fellows joining. Oh, wow, they popped up. Okay, two of our fellows joining virtually here. I'll start with Marcella, who you can see now. Marcella Pinalcarez is the fellow for Northern Arizona University. Marcella has over a decade of experience in large-scale project management and transformational change, both in the private and public sectors. Areas of impact include sourcing, negotiation and contracting strategy, organizational structure design, supply chain technologies, product lifecycle management, global business process improvement, and international education. So Marcella is committed to joining us and really building that strategic and systematic solutions to increasing student success in service to the AIA mission. Then we have Andrew Saracino, which I'm not seeing on the screen right here now, but Andrew Saracino is the fellow for Arizona State University. He has over 12 years of experience working with underrepresented students, both nationally and internationally, to improve educational equity. Most recently, Andrew was a part of and established a $2 million ASU Visiting Scholar Program, really focused on preparing students to alleviate the energy crisis in Pakistan. Andrew comes from a family of lumberjacks where his mother, uncle, aunt, and several cousins graduated from NAU. So we are certainly excited to have them on board and welcome them to the team.
Great.
Next slide, please.
So one of our very first projects that we all gathered around multiple Zoom rooms to discuss was the big, hairy, audacious goal that President Kaur has at Arizona Western, and how we as the Tri-U and the
you. Next slide, please. In addition to the, next slide, please. All right, well, okay. So this is an example of the kinds of things that we can do with project teams, is to identify specific blocking and tackling types of efforts. Big planning is nice, but the blocking and tackling is what gets it done with the retention and pathways and all of those kinds of things. So how one communicates with students at different points in this life cycle of getting them all the way from enrolled and through we've discovered it at all the universities, and we have proved it at the University Innovation Alliance level, is really important. And so the groups of people that actually work on that at each of the universities is forming themselves into a community of practice that will share the different ideas and different approaches that are being taken at each university. And we can try to get a sense of which ones are best working, which mix and match will work better. And that's just an example of the kinds of things that these project teams will work on as we move along. Next slide, please. And just as an example, again, these are just examples from the University Innovation Alliance of things that have been worked on over the years, and that I think we won't be doing these same things with the Arizona Innovation Alliance, but it gives an idea of sort of the scale and level of things that you can do when universities are working together. As an example, I'll only talk about one example up there, predictive analytics. When the UIA was founded, 4 of the 11 institutions were using some sort of sophisticated method of predictive analytics in their advising communities to try to identify students that were off track, that were having particular problems, and so that targeted interventions could take place. The other 7 universities, in learning about that, decided that they would buy the kind of systems and start to integrate the kind of systems necessary. That's interesting. It's sort of a big level thing. But the most important thing was we now had 11 universities who were taking 11 slightly different approaches to how to use data as in interventions. And it's at that level of learning about individual things that innovations really come out that are effective. And so that's how the Arizona Innovation Alliance will work. The University Innovation Alliance has been tremendously successful. It set a goal of 68,000 additional graduates from the 11 universities in its first 10 years of activity. It hit that goal after 6 years and is in fact 5,000 ahead of that. It set a goal of increasing the number of graduates coming from traditionally underrepresented populations, either economically or students of color. 50% of those additional graduates should be those kinds of students. As it turned out, in that first 6 years, the number of Pell students increased by 36%, and the number of students of color increased by over 70%. So it hit both the larger targets and the sub-targets that were actually being targeted. If we can come anywhere near those kinds of success levels and that kind of rate of success, I'm going to be really pleased. And I hope we can come back and talk to you about those things sometime in the future. Next and last slide, please. And so this is in general what we've been working on. I know it feels a little slow to start with, but now that we've got the team in place and we're starting to have some meetings, I'm confident that we're going to start showing some progress very quickly. So we will be working along, and I hope that we can be invited back perhaps in January for another report on how things are going. And I think I'm really, thank you to the liaisons, thank you to the fellows. People have pulled together very, very quickly and are pursuing this in the spirit that was intended for cooperation between the 3 universities.
Well, thank you, Rich. Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, Annika. Thanks, Mary, Marcella, Andrew, Barry. Good to see you again, Barry. Thanks to all of you for the work that you're doing. I appreciate it as well, Rich, linking this back to the University Alliance that this really has come out of. And I appreciate the groups taking on the project in Yuma. We're an unusual state, as all of you know, with the concentration of population principally in this metropolitan area, plus the metropolitan areas of Tucson and Flagstaff. But as well, in Yuma, we have a part of the state that really has very low attainment rates, that has set as a goal doubling its attainment rate and has a president in President Kaur at Arizona Western College, who happens to have all three of our universities engaged in one way or another in collaboration with Arizona Western College. So you've taken on a project that particularly has an opportunity for collaboration. And by all means, I'd love to have you back in January and have you all tell us how much progress you've made and what we can hope to realize from that collaboration. There's every reason to believe that students in the western part of the state and parts of California that come across the state border to take classes at Arizona Western College can be enriched and have a more rapid graduation from college if we do a better job of both working with Arizona Western and working among all four of us to really create a much more seamless collaboration. So with those comments, I thank you all, and I turn to members of the board who may have questions or comments. Hearing none, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to turn to the online metrics and reporting. And I believe, Chad, you're going to lead us through the issue of online metrics that you and others have been engaged in developing. Chad?
Thank you, Chair Penley. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Ask Helen Baxendale to join me up here with the committee, if that's okay. Helen, along with Jane Kuhn and George Raudenbush from our team, has engaged with the regents on the working group and the senior leaderships of the universities on a number of metric areas. And today we have the opportunity to talk to you about the online metrics. Just to set the stage, although I know regents, especially most of the regents on this committee, are very familiar with the online metrics and why they're necessary. The regents had more than a year ago, under the leadership of what was then Chair Penley, for chair of the board and not chair of this committee, began in earnest the revisions to the metrics process with the three universities. That included enterprise-wide metrics that were meant to drive university performance towards achieving the goals set out in the regents' adopted promise to the state of Arizona, and the institutional metrics that working with each individual university to drive differentiation and drive the mission that are either written in granite as they are in this campus, or part of their strategic plan as they are at the University of Arizona. In addition to that, the regents found themselves in a position where we were increasing rapidly the number of students enrolled in our online platforms. Obviously, ASU is the shining example of that, with both graduate and undergraduate enrollment increasing exponentially. But in addition, NAU has a large majority of their master's programs online now. And even at U of A, which is a smaller portion of this, has close to 15% of its enrollment now online. And so the regents found themselves in the position of governing enrollment on online platforms, which are very distinct from the immersion in the traditional on-campus experience. Given that, we realized that online students and online platforms are still compelled to report to the federal government through its IPED system specific data and student data and success ratios, including first-time full-time retention and 6-year graduation rate. Given that the online population is demographically distinct and very different from the traditional online platform, and that the first-time full-time student is a rarity generally on online platforms, as most students are transfer students, we realized that we needed additional metrics to provide additional context, additional oversight for the regents, so that we weren't stuck with what were the traditional measures of retention and graduation. That said, we've worked diligently with all three universities and the online leads to come up with a set of 6 metrics. And those metrics are focused around 2 goals. The first goal, if we go to the next slide, the first goal is the quality of the online student experience. And if you look at that, there are various metrics. There's 6 of them that you can find in your materials, and it's upline. But essentially looking at student retention and student progression towards a degree, because the one thing that is transcendent among all the students that we currently measure is that they all want a degree, and they want a degree that has market value. The last goal, the second goal, is university brand and reputation, and we have a metric specific with that. If we can go to the next slide, we have one on that leverage, which is the online program rank in U.S. News and World Report. So again, we want to thank the university online leads for listening to the words that the committee had said, the direction that the work group of regents have put on this, and we believe we put forth a suite of 6 metrics, which again sits on top of a large amount of other reporting to be able to give regents good oversight and insight into the university online operations. If I can beg the committee's indulgence for one more minute, and we can go to the next slide. This was brought up in several questions recently, are we only going to look at these 6 things? Are these 6 what traditionally called OKRs or KPIs, however you want to define them, are these it for our online view, or excuse me, the regent's view into the online operations of our universities? And the truth is that is absolutely not the case. We have forecast measures, we have metrics, and we have our other metrics, forecast measures, and annual reporting that applies to our online programs, as well as the 6 that sit on top of it. So with that, I am happy to stand for further questions about our reporting or the 6 online metrics that we proposed today for committee recommendation.
Thanks very much, Chad. When can we expect to see the first report on online metrics?
So you will see online reporting. For example, enrollment. We will break out online enrollment from traditional on-campus enrollment as part of our enrollment report. So you will have that, and then we will move on to persistence, and then we will move on to enrollment in our what we're calling our academic program inventory, and then we'll move on to graduation and graduation rate, and you will have broken out in each one of those reports the online enrollment the online activity for each institution. And I think Regent or Chair Pemberley, you are also prompting me to bring up that in addition to that, we have discussed at length with the University of Arizona that UA Global Campus will also be reporting on these very metrics and reporting items.
Thank you, Chad. Questions or comments from members of the board? Yeah, Chair Manson?
Thank you. Just one very brief question. The next step in this would be to identify the targets within these metrics, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Other questions or comments? If not, I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval of the online metrics for Arizona's public universities. Do I have a second?
Second.
I hear a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does pass. The next item on the agenda is Arizona State University's institutional university metrics. And Chad, I believe that you, along with representatives of Arizona State University, are going to proceed with discussing these metrics, right?
Yes, that is correct, Chair. In the interest of time, I will present the proposed metrics, but we do have the senior team from Arizona State University here to answer any questions, as well as Helen and I from my team.
Mr. Chairman, I might want to introduce one new senior
Sure.
officer.
By all means, introduce Christian.
Yeah, Christian Osminia is the Vice President for Enterprise Planning and Strategy, which is at the enterprise level of ASU. He is a PhD out of the University of California, Davis, undergraduate, UC Berkeley, master's degree at University of Southern California. He has served as a deputy chief of staff in the governor's office in the state of California, working for both Governor Schwarzenegger and Governor Brown, and was the vice president for and CFO of the California Community College system when we hired him into this job. He's also been the budget director for higher education for the state of California in the past, among other things that he has accomplished.
And despite one regent, and I'm speaking of myself, giving Christian a hard time about needing metrics from ASU that more closely aligned with what is being articulated about the values and vision of ASU, he went back and he did that. So Christian, I've already said thank you, and I apologize for making more work in your life right after you arrived, but you did it.
Christian, you want to say anything before I move on?
Thank you very much. Thanks, President Crow, and great to work with you all.
It is a pleasure to work with Christian and Nancy and the entire ASU team. With that, as Chair Penley alluded to, we have been working with ASU for over a year on their institutional metrics. In May of this year, after a committee discussion, it was decided that there needed to be further revision. The Regents Working Group and the ASU Senior Administration took some of the comments to heart, and they have come back with a new revised proposal for the committee's review and discussion. This is the first time several regents have had an opportunity to review and discuss these metrics, and we'd like to present them quickly to you now. So if we can go to the next slide. ASU's revised institutional metrics are around 5 goals. These goals, we hope, and were designed to track closely with ASU's charter, its design principles, and the statements it has made with regard to its vision in numerous board and committee meetings over the years. The first goal is establish Ira A. Fulton School of Engineering as among the most significant engineering schools in the United States. You will notice that there are 4 potential metrics associated with that goal. 3 of those metrics are designed to make the School of Engineering grow at scale. And the 4th focuses on the learning outcomes and the ultimate results for the students of that group. I can stand for questions among each of the goals or continue on, Chair Penley. What would be your preference?
I would say just present them. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Board members, then please proceed, Chad.
Absolutely.
But Chad, did we say in the United States, or did we say in the solar system?
Universe.
No, we don't know about the universe. We know enough about the solar system.
Would you like me to change that?
I think
President
you had
Crowe?
written in solar system, but I think I laughed.
I don't know how to respond to that, so I'm going to move to goal number.
Neither do I, Chad.
Goal number 2.
Go big or go home.
Goal number 2 is to further develop ASU as an engine of social mobility. There are 2 goals associated with this particular, there are 2 potential metrics associated with this goal. Pell Grant student success and student success by race ethnicity, which is a focus and again harkens back to ASU's charter. And if we can go to the next slide, we have goal 3, which is establish ASU as a leading global center for interdisciplinary research and discovery and development. And the potential metric is, again, scaling ASU's continued research activities in the interdisciplinary fields, which will be an opportunity, given that ASU already ranks very high in this particular area. So they've set themselves a robust goal there. Goal 4 is integrate cutting edge technology, innovation, and scalability in all realms. And this has to do with, both metrics has to do with ASU's adaptive learning technology in the classroom, enrolling students and having those students persist in the classroom. Finally is creating solutions and improving the lives in Arizona and beyond. And this includes using ASU Digital Prep in partnership with Arizona high schools to enroll more students
and to get more of to provide us with more opportunity to enroll further students in Arizona. And then 5, science and technology centers, and specifically industry partners, having a meaningful collaboration and partnership with ASU in their science and technology centers. With that, I will stand unless Christian or Nancy, Provost Gonzalez have things they need to correct me on. I will stand for questions.
Any comments, Christian?
No, we thank you and to Chair Manson and for Regent Duval for working with us through this, and hopefully we've reached a place that, I think we've reached a place that we are excited about, and hopefully the board is as well.
Thank you. Provost Gonzalez or President Crow, any comments?
I would just also thank you. It's been a robust back and forth trying to come up with the right set of metrics, and I think these are very well aligned with how we see our mission. So I'm glad to be at this place.
The only thing that I would add is that all of these are very difficult. The only thing I would add. So some of them are extremely difficult, particularly the 6-year graduation rate objective, moving to a no difference based on any family starting conditions.
I agree with you. It's a very difficult one, but again, it struck me as being so consistent with what the institution and you have articulated, that as difficult as it is, it's embedded.
It's an area we have not yet succeeded in, which is why we have fresh horses at the Pony Express stations manned by or staffed by Nancy and her team.
Board members, comments or questions on ASU's metrics?
I just want to say I appreciate, this was a lot of conversations back and forth, as you mentioned, Nancy, and I think we all came out in a very good place, and I think the regents have a better understanding of how you all are looking to make decisions and what's important, and I think we're all on the same page in the directions and what we're trying to measure.
Yeah, and I believe, Chad, we're not ready to move this to the full board yet, or not?
That is correct. This is the first time this committee in its entirety has seen this, so we will move that forward in November.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make one additional comment on the online goals, and I think we ended up in a good place with the goals that are on the chart. Of the 80,000 or so online students that we have, the vast majority of them are people that started college and never finished. There's over 1 million people in Arizona that started college and never finished. More than half the people that have gone to college in the United States that are still alive have no degree. And so the normal metrics don't really work in that particular realm. And as Chad already said, very few start as first-time, full-time freshmen. There's some, but even if they did, they might be 30 when they did that, as opposed to 18. And so the board will have to be attuned to the fact that we're dealing in 2 completely different realms. Kids coming out of high school, coming to an immersion campus, and then people going to an online set of programs. And so it's going to require discipline on all of our parts to get a good picture of how we're doing.
I agree with you. It is going to require discipline, and you've accurately described the market, I believe, that all of us know. When we initiated the idea of online metrics, it seemed a difficult undertaking, but one that was necessary, but one that had to be done in the context of the kind of market that those students represent and the kind of challenges that you have with working adults who may well take a course now and take another course later, and who may well take years to finally complete the degree. So I appreciate the work that you, President Crow, and others have done to make those online metrics a reality.
And I'll just add that many, if not most, online programs in the country have no admission requirements. And our online programs have the same admission requirements to the program as to the degree program on campus. And that's a really important differentiator. That doesn't mean we don't have other programs, but it's just something worth noting as one looks at these things.
Another good point. With that, we're going to turn to the University of Arizona and its metrics, its institutional metrics. And Chad, I believe you and representatives from the University of Arizona are going to present these, right?
That is correct, Chair Penley. Thank you. We do have Barry Drummond, and I believe Provost Lisa Folks is available as well as some of President Robbins' other senior team. And I will present these metrics without endeavoring to editorialize. So we'll go from the University of Arizona, like the other ASU, has been working with board staff and the Regent Working Group and the committee for, again, well over a year on these metrics. We want to thank them for their hard work and their hard effort, and are bringing forward this group of institutional metrics for committee recommendation at this meeting. And with the committee's permission, I'd like to briefly run through those metrics as well. If we can go to the next slide. The University of Arizona's institutional metrics are focused around 3 goals. These track with the University of Arizona strategic plan that has been presented and adopted by the board. The first goal is strategically recruit prospective high potential undergraduate students. And if you look at the potential metrics, or the metrics that are bring forward, they include improving their position in U.S. News and World Report, recruiting high-performing students from the state of Arizona and residents, recruiting Pell students and improving the graduation rate between Pell students and the other students in their same cohort, and recruiting students to match the demographic diversity of the state of Arizona, and then ensuring that those students also succeed in graduation. If there are no questions, I'll move on to goal number 2. The second is tackle critical problems at the edge of human endeavor. And you will notice the University of Arizona has put forth potential metrics in space and science research, health and medical research, and then using the research and improving their technology transfer operations, specifically with license and options income generated. And then if we can go to the next slide, you will see goal number 3, raise the profile and prestige of University of Arizona's academic programs, of which they have a number listed, both undergrads and graduate degrees. And we really appreciate the University of Arizona and the efforts they have made to identify where they're going to move forward, and how to put some real metrics around the vision that was laid out in the strategic plan that President Robbins and his team put forward to the board several years ago. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thanks, Chad. President Robbins, do you have a comment?
I think Barry and Lisa may be available for comment. I would just say, again, this was a back and forth, and I appreciate all the hard work that so many people put into this. And as Chad correctly highlights there, it does, these goals and metrics align with the strategic plan that we have in place, and we look forward to achieving these goals. So I see that Provost Folks and Barry have magically come on the screen.
Thank you, Provost Folks.
I don't know that I need to add too much color. I think that was a terrific summary of where we've landed, and a lot of thought and effort went into establishing these parameters, and we are actively working towards them.
Thank you, Provost Folks. And Barry, like Christian, I know we've caused you a lot of extra work, but comments that you might like to make?
Well, Chair Penley, I think really I want to thank the team at the University of Arizona that has sort of gone through the process of exploring many different directions in all of the discussions over the course of the last year or so. And I'd like to thank Chad and Helen and George. This has been certainly a discussion between university leaders and the regents, but the assistance behind the scenes in sort of trying out many different paths has been considerable, both at the board office and at the university. So I think the process has led to an outcome that reflects what the University of Arizona is focused on. And in the course of getting to this place, I think that we have explored many other worthwhile things as well.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks for also recognizing Chad, Helen, and George. I think as those of us know who've worked closely with those of you who've developed these metrics, it's taken a lot of work on the part of Chad, Helen, and George, but also a great deal of work from the teams at the University of Arizona and Arizona State University to reach the stage we're at today. So I just thank all of you. This helps us to differentiate these three universities. We have yet to work on the goals and metrics associated with the Northern Arizona University, but we have deliberately delayed that, giving President Cruz Rivera a chance to be on the ground for a few weeks or a few months before we undertake that and grab pieces of his team to work with us. So that's why we're not talking about goals today for Northern Arizona University. But thanks to all of you who've made this possible. Board members, comments, questions?
Larry?
Yes, sir. Regent Herbold.
It's always impressive to see these numbers related to space and optics and aerospace. And I guess the real goal here is don't mess it up.
Exactly.
This is really a spectacular group of people that I've heard a lot about, and very impressive work. So I know it will continue.
And that glass easily breaks down there, Bob. Other comments from members of the board? If not, I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval of the University of Arizona's annual institutional university metrics. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Chair Manson, any final comments before we adjourn today?
Nothing from me. You get bonus points for being early.
Hey, I've done it again, but I had to read real fast at points to do that. We are adjourned.